So Clemens, let's start with the basics. So why focus on rivers? How much of the ocean's plastics problem actually begins there?
Like having a look, we founded the company back in 2018,
Yep.
and back then everyone was talking about obviously the ocean cleanup and the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and cleaning up the oceans. And there was a study which said that 10 rivers are responsible for 80% of the material flowing into the oceans. So for us, it was kind of obvious to start at rivers. Now the situation changed a bit because now it's a bit more than 1,000 rivers to stop 80%. But still, I think, 1,000 rivers is a number which is not frightening at all. That's a starting point for us. And of course, we are looking not only into the collection in rivers, but also around rivers, really door-to-door step collection to get closer to the source. But rivers are a main contributor.
Okay, and just going to sort of the solutions of what Everware has designed, you look at river barriers, boats, sorting systems. Can you talk a little bit about how all of this works together as a system in practice?
Yeah, so we are called Everwave, maybe to make that short and it's clear. We have, like, if you look at the global situation, there are different streams, different rivers. You need to adapt to that, and therefore we have a flexible boat fleet which can collect highly efficiently plastic. Normally they're used for weed harvesting in rivers, and we said, look, that looks like we can use it for plastic collection as well. And one boat can collect up to 20 tons. So that's a massive amount of waste. And then again, looking into the river systems, using barriers, but also, especially in Southeast Asia, you have the water level dropping quite fast. So what we do is we take manual cleanup teams along the shoreline if it's dry season, and when it's wet season, we use the boats more frequently. And yeah, it's always kind of adapt to the situation we find and then implement the technology which makes most sense. And of course, going one step further, the regions we work in, there's literally no waste management infrastructure. Like nobody ever did anything like that before in that region.
What are the main sort of markets that you're working?
The biggest market is Cambodia for us, but we have also a collection project in Southeast Europe, in Albania, at the most polluted rivers, one of the most polluted rivers in Europe. So it's 2 hours flight distance, not somewhere. It's really in the heart of Europe, or in the middle of Europe. And the situation is always the same. There is no waste management infrastructure. So, of course, we had to think quite early on that what do we do with the waste we collect? And the only logical step is to invest into sorting facilities, really build local infrastructure, create value on the ground, build teams, local teams, and sort the material. And that's basically it. I would say the biggest strength of ours is not the technology side. It's more to implement it into challenging surroundings.
So what are some examples of the challenges that you find within the surroundings? I mean, I want to move on to the technology next, but I'm interested by your point there.
I mean, the political situation in these countries is not like we are used to have here. You have to adapt to that. Also, the culture is different, of course, communication. So this is something, the learning curve has to be quite fast to adapt to that. And at the end, it's all about relationship building. For example, we started in Cambodia 2022, and the first person I met was the Minister of Tourism, because they see a clear relation between waste and tourism and how it affects each other. And now we have a 5-year contract with the Ministry of Environment there. So it's really going into the market, understanding the market, and then learn from that. We have done so many mistakes. Just to mention one wouldn't be right.
Yeah. So it sounds like your financing structure is usually contracts with public sector and government ministries? No,
not at all. We tried that. That's kind of obvious, right? For example, we clean a dam or an electricity plant in Bosnia, and normally the owner should pay for that service, right? We tried that in 2022, 2023. There's no money there. We tried to convince local authorities. We do your job, pay us. Not working. So what we then did is kind of translated it. We saw the carbon market emerging, and our core product is now the plastic credits. What we do is we offer the credit to corporates all around the world to take responsibility for their own waste footprint. It's really much comparable to the carbon market, but we try to avoid the mistakes the carbon market did before, like no double counting, maximum transparency, a good quality communication, and yeah, that is now funding our operations.
Fabulous. And I like the idea of learning actually from carbon markets and applying it to other ones. I mean, we've at The Economist have been looking into this, for example, in places like biodiversity and other areas. Speaking about sort of perhaps biodiversity, but more, let's say, the source. I mean, it sounds like a lot of the focus of your company is on maybe what we would call the symptoms, the cleanup side of everything.
Yeah.
Do you connect sort of river cleanup also with preventing plastics entering the system in the first place, or do you have partnerships that are engaged in the entire life cycle?
Yes, we do, but nobody's willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge for awareness raising is how do you measure it and how do you build a product out of it? That's what we experienced quite early on. Of course, you can get donations, but that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to build a proper business case out of that. But what happens, of course, we bring the boat to a certain place, be there for the first time, create impact. It attracts people. Obviously, the ministry is there. They want to do kind of window dressing, of course, with the impact, which is then there at the end. And we create kind of local heroes within their communities. Like the people working for us, they are really, of course, they get attention for their work, they create change on the ground. So it's more, at the end, a bottom-up approach, not really targeting awareness, but it's there.
It's a byproduct, a welcome byproduct.
When we go to let's say Albania, and there's a dam full of plastic, and it's empty 6 weeks later, I mean that's awareness and impact at the same time.
Yeah. Let's go back to this question about the technology, because it is really interesting. Your model also sort of collects data on the waste that you're recovering. What kind of insights are you gathering from that data, and what's emerging about where the plastic pollution is coming from? I mean, what's sort of the underlying power there?
I would say there is no data in that field. We like all of us in the room, if you see a place which is polluted, we all think it's polluted, but the amount of pollution is very personal. And that's what we wanted to address. We wanted to find out, first of all, from an operational perspective, how to implement our boats the most efficient way, right? And we implemented where the most waste is. The second important part of the data for us is, of course, now we track volume, right? But to get an understanding of the entry path of the polluters, real data source on the polluters, that's key to convince them, but also help local authorities to build waste management infrastructure differently. Like if for example, we are working in Albania, there's around 80% PET. We all know the PET bottles, right? And we all know who's selling these PET bottles. It's Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and whatsoever. And I think if you show them a picture, they are aware and they know. If you show them data, that is changing the discussion. And we don't want to create pressure on these companies, but it helps us in terms of sales. Obviously.
That's great. And so those seem like pretty critical partnerships, right? I mean, it seems like you're engaging directly with those companies, you're engaging with the local authorities. Can you discuss a little bit sort of the wider sort of partnership network that you might be engaged with? I mean, obviously, also sort of on the building and technology side of what you're doing. Can you discuss a little bit that partnership ecosystem?
But I wanted to mention or to highlight before that what we heard before in the panel, going to the places or the companies where there's the most need. That's actually one big goal we have. We want to convince the top 10 polluters globally to work together with us. Because first of all, change is bigger, it potentially is faster, and it also helps us to create the best potential product, right? We have to have track and trace in place. We have to have like all legal frameworks in place. We have to have reporting at the highest standard, marketing material, all that combines and pays off at the end at our product. But of course, we have like the boat builder. We have a network there. We have universities working together with us on AI, drone detection, lightweight plane detection, really flying over certain areas to get a faster understanding about the situation and kind of create a hotspot map. That's important for us, especially in the beginning of a young company. You don't have big budgets. You have to.
Well, so for example, that's very interesting. So in the use of kind of mapping sort of where the problems are and then using AI to distill that, as you said, are these sort of like data providers that you're sort of partnering up with that are doing this widely? Are you sort of developing these maps?
It's our algorithm. It's our algorithm. There are a couple of out there, but they are more focusing on high capacity, like recycling plants. You won't find any high-capacity recycling plant in Cambodia. So what we have is we build our own AI tool for implementation within our project. So small to medium-sized scale sorting, manual sorting, that's different. Therefore, it's always we look what's out there, what type of tools we have, and try to implement it as efficient as possible into our everwave world at the end.
Yeah, great. And can you talk a little bit about sort of your ambitions or your plans for scaling? You mentioned some of the critical either policies that need to be in place as you go from countries to countries to make it attractive, not only in sort of the markets to work, but also what you need from that sort of side of infrastructure. But in order to really sort of scale, what are sort of the critical changes that you would want or you would need in order to grow as fast as you want?
For us, plastic credits mandatory within EPR frames would be a game changer, obviously. Then it's a more competitive market than it is now. We know that, but it would help the cause, of course. But we see that already, like in the Philippines, they have a mandatory plastic credit scheme where companies are forced to offset a certain amount of their footprint of the packaging they put out into the market. And it's working super good because it's always the same. There's lack of money for waste management infrastructure, and that's how you channel that money. So it helps. But for us, to be honest, again, coming back to the beginning, at 2018, nobody cared about ocean pollution. And now every single step in terms of legislation, CSRD, companies are forced to measure their footprint, not only in terms of carbon, but also in terms of waste. They understand their data. Everything is helping us in our cause because it creates attention, it creates awareness for the companies. And of course, like forward-thinking companies already are thinking about, well, we have the data. At a certain point of time, we have to do something against what we already know. And I think plastic credits are a great tool for that because it's, again, super strong in track and trace. And on the emotional side of things, our calculation is €1 1 kilo. Super easy. You can directly communicate to your own customers. Again, super transparent. And we all can relate to 1 kilogram of waste, right? We have it at home. So the emotional bond is way stronger than, for example, planting a tree in Mexico. It's different type of storytelling. That's important as well. But it's a competitive advantage for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just ask the last question, because we're running a little bit over time. We had a great discussion at the end of Monday about sort of the role of the entire plastic ecosystem. And something that came out of it was the limitations in terms of multiple recycling of plastics. Can you talk a little bit about the end of life around plastics and how you're engaged with what you're collecting and how to optimize that?
Yeah, for us, the value chain ends with selling the recyclable material like PET bottles to local recyclers or international recyclers, depending on the market situation. And the rest, for example, non-recyclable waste goes to cement factory, which is called co-processing waste to energy at the end, instead of coal. For us, again, looking at the legislation coming up, PPWR, the Packaging Waste Directive, that's a push for us. We already collect the material. There's simply no market or no relevant market at the moment because the production or the use of virgin material is so cheap that nobody wants to use recyclable material, right? But again, for me, that's a matter of time that the work we do creates feedstock all around the world. And of course, we see it as an additional revenue stream.
I was going to say, and probably in addition to your financing scheme.
When we started the company, that was basically the one we really saw the most potential. It's just from a global perspective, it's not happening now. Oil prices and all that, we all know the situation. But for me, it's a matter of time. We have to think more in resources, in circularity, and we will be there no matter what. So, and we want to use that advantage for us.
Great. So it seems like options are expanding.
Yeah.
Great. Clemens, CEO of everwave, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.